Welcome to this video, where we are going to see how Adquio screens work with Casambi. This video accompanies our blog post, in which we also explained these same points, but we believe that you will understand it much better if you watch it on video. In this video we will see how to connect an Adquio screen to any of the Adquio controllers. How should the Adquio controller be configured to be able to connect a display and serve the data to it? What happens in an Adquio controller when variables are modified on the screen? How is the display configured to connect to the Adquio controller? What components do we have available to design the interfaces for our clients? And finally, what else can these screens offer us? Let's go with it. How to connect an Adquio display to an Adquio controller to locally control a Casambi network. As you can see in this simple image, all we are going to need is to connect the Adquio screen to one of the LAN ports of an Adquio Pro or an Adquio Lite with a network cable. Okay, if we do it this way, the screen will need to be powered by its own power adapter. In addition, in another of the LAN ports of that Adquio, we will connect a PoE, power supply, which will provide current through the network cable to the device behind it, in this case, the Ethernet gateway. In this way, Adquio in a network port has a connection to the Casambi network directly and locally through the Ethernet gateway, and through another network port, it has a connection to the screen that allows controlling that Casambi network. Obviously, if instead of putting a Ethernet gateway, you put 16, you would have direct control of 16 Casambi networks. There is virtually no limit to the number of Casambi networks you can manage. Okay? Yes, you would have to select the appropriate controller with the necessary power to manage the number of variables that reach us from those networks. In the Adquio ecosystem, you have 6 options for this. If the installation is a little more complicated, we could have a very similar but different scheme. In this case, we have an Adquio Mini, which only has a network port and connects to a PoE switch. What advantages does this installation have? Well, it simplifies a bit because that PoE switch feeds both the Ethernet gateway adapter and the Adquio screen. In this way, we simplify the wiring and make everything easier. Okay, in this case, the example has been set with an Adquio Mini, and that PoE switch would also give us internet access or a connection to the BMS, to which we are providing information. We are going to see the complete circuit of how to generate a device variable in Adquio, how to pass it to the screen, and how to bind it in a control. Okay, so we start by going to Devices. Devices. Let's create a new device. We are going to say that it is of the memory type, because it is a virtual variable that we are going to generate for ourselves, that does not belong to any external device. Let's call it test1. And the module is going to be vars, because it is a module that we have prepared for virtual variables that do not belong to any external device. We keep it. We apply the changes. And now, at the bottom, we can add variables. So, we are going to generate a variable that we are going to also call var1. And we're just going to tell it that it's a 16-bit integer. Okay? By default, it can already be read and written. Let's save it. We save and apply the changes. Alright, now we have created a variable. We are going to export. Let's tell it that we want to add a variable. We tell it that we want to filter by device and select the one we just created. Test1. We only have one variable, so we select it. Select. We will see that he adds it to us at the end, but that it has no direction. Okay? The last address is 188 and we should put 189. We have 2 ways to do it. 1, if we enter here to edit it. We can set it manually. Or if we prefer, and we have more than one, it is much more comfortable to hit this button, tell it that we start at 1. Because we could also have started at 0, but in this case we start at 1. We save, and it has automatically given the first free address, which in this case is not 189, but 181, because there was a gap here between 180 and 182. Correct? Very good, so we will simply remember that this variable is 181. Keep. We apply the changes. And now, if we go to variables and select our device, we'll see this variable that's set to 0, okay? Because no one has charged any value to it. Very well, we remember then that it is 181. Later we will need, when we configure the screen, to know the IP address of our Adquio. In order to verify this, you will go to the system network, and we will see that your Adquio, in this case, has the IP address 192.168.1.159. You must remember this or come looking for it here, when you configure your server on the screen, which will be this Adquio. Okay, we'll see later. When we enter the HMI editor, we will see a screen like this, totally empty. To make the connection with Adquio, we must go to these three dots up here. You will go to Server Settings. You will give the More option to add a connection. You will select Modbus TCP connection. And he's going to bring you to this window, okay? Where you will have to indicate the name of the installation, or the name of the controller to which we are going to connect. In this case, it will be an Adquio Mini. The IP address of this controller, which we have already seen in a previous step, where to obtain it in Adquio. There is a value here below that is important, which is the refresh time. We recommend setting it to 1 second by default. It comes in 3. And from here all the values can be perfectly default. Okay? We are going to get out of here without saving, and I am going to show you the connection that is already working. We have named it Adquio Mini. It has an IP address that is correct for this Adquio Mini, and indeed we have set a refresh time of 1 second. Once we have done all the configuration, we can check if we have done it correctly by clicking on the Test Connection button. And if it responds with a green message, we have done it correctly. In addition to this, we need to create a module. To create this module, you will click on this button, and you will come to a window like this, where you will simply write, for example, Adquio and number 1. And all we have to do, if we want, as in the previous case, press the test button to verify that everything is correct. You will press the Save button, and you already have it. In this simple way, you already have the screen connected to Adquio. From here, we would have to go back to the 3 dots and click on the Connect option. At this moment I am already connected, but if I were not, you would see it like this, then you would have to click on it and it will turn green, which is that it is already connected to Adquio. To add a component connected to that variable, we'll simply give this option More. Let's select, for example, a switch or a button. Here you can select what type you want, if you want a button, if you want a slider, different colors, different shapes. Okay, let's select, for example, this one. And now, all you have to do is tell it that it belongs to Adquio Mini, and in the address you have to tell it what unit ID it is. And in the address we have to tell it that unit ID is the module that we had created, which is Adquio, and simply the address 181. Okay? We keep it. We place it where we like. And to test it, we are going to click on it, we are going to go to Adquio, and we are going to see that the value of this variable is at 1. We return to the screen, deactivate it, and we will see that the variable in Adquio is at 0. In this very simple way, we have just connected a control on the screen to a variable in Adquio. This variable, as I already told you on another occasion in this video, can be both a virtual variable like our current case, or it can be a variable from any device. In this case, we have 4 Lithernet gateways connected. It could be a variable from any of these Casambi networks. Okay? And it can be connected to a luminaire, a scene, a group, an animation, etc. As you have just seen, in the list of variables, if we select our device, this variable changes in real time. It's at 0, it's at 1. Okay, but what if we want to make this variable change trigger something in programming? Well, we are going to go to scripts, and I have created a script here called Demo Screen Events. Let's see it. We have a script with a very simple syntax, which is always the same. This can be copied and pasted and adapted to the variable and the device that we want. Okay? It's an event that captures a change of variable from device test1, which is the one we just generated, and from this device of variable 1. And it leaves it to us in a variable called EV, which are the initials of event value. The only thing we do in this event is send a message through our logging system that tells us that variable 1 now contains the value that comes from the event. In this case, event value, new value. What will happen when the values of this variable are modified on the screen? Well, we are going to get messages of this type down here. Okay, right now we see that it is at 1. This code is already running. We set it to 0, and we come here, and we see that the event has just jumped, and it tells us that it is at 0. We can do this as many times as we want. Okay? It's instant. Obviously, as you have already read in the article that triggered this video, if this variable, instead of being virtual, belonged to a device, the screen is directly modifying the device variable. Okay, you're writing directly to the variables on that device without our intervention. If we want to intervene, all we have to do is something like this. Associate an event that we want to be executed when this variable changes from the device that we need, from the variable that we want to monitor its change, and in EV we have the content of that change. In this case, since it is a switch, we only have 1 or 0, but it could be a dimmer or any other value. Okay? What components do we have available to use and compose our dashboard? As we just saw, we have switches like this. We exit execution mode, we return to design mode, but we have LEDs of many types, including specific LEDs for burglary, alarms, window states, for example open and closed, door states, motion detection. There was even a fire around here. Okay? There are icons for all tastes, from generic to the red and green icon for on and off. LED simply that they are on or off, and so on. The status of the LED can be associated to different values of the variables. You can even make the LED disappear. This is going to happen with almost every component. The LED can be made to disappear if the variable contains a value, in this case, for example, if it is equal to -2. If we put a -2 in the variable that we associate with this component, the component will disappear from the screen. Okay? We can put here, with what value it is activated, with what value it is deactivated. In this case, if it is non-zero, it will be triggered. If it is equal to 0, it will be disabled. And we also have the animation option, which what it does is that if it is activated, instead of being static, it will be blinking. Okay? Interesting in some cases. We also have the option of buttons that we have just seen. We have the option to display texts. Not only that, but we can also place this type of indicators that allows us to display values using an analog system. Okay? Let's delete it. And this LED that we have left from before too. We have sliders, very useful for managing the regulation of specific scenes or lighting. We have regulators, but circular, not linear like the previous ones. We have dashboards, and we even have images as well. These images will be very useful, for example, to generate screensavers. We have many more. If you have an Adquio screen, we invite you to explore it for yourselves. As a button generator to be able to create them to your liking. Controllers for RGB lighting. Well, many more that allows us to make practically any interface. We don't recommend you to use the box components, but we recommend you to put a background image in each panel and then place the components on top, because in this way the creativity has no limits. You can make the image with Photoshop, with Canva or with any design tool and then simply place the objects on top. It is much better. We are going to see how to put a button to switch between panels, in case we have more than one. Okay? This is going to happen especially when, for example, we have different users with different permissions and we want to separate the controls to which only one type of user will have access into different panels, for example, an administrator user. The most normal thing is to have a screen in which the main panel, this panel is almost always visible, is a panel that can be available to the public, where you can turn the lighting on, off, even regulate it if you want, and that this panel can also have a screensaver, for example. And also, put a button to enter the administration area, where you can change installation values that a normal user does not have access to. To do this we will add an object, we will go to the Level 2 tab, and we will take the Button Creator option. We are going to select, for example, this little arrow. We're going to tell it that it's 40 pixels tall and wide. And we are going to select System. And this what it's going to do is select the next panel. Okay, when we click it. Very good. Let's check it out. Let's put it, for example, here. We run it. And, as you can see, I have taken us to another panel because the button has disappeared. Alright, let's quickly add one more return button. So we give to the more. We added a new button. Select the back arrow button. Let's tell it is System button. And we are going to tell it that we want to go to the Previews panel. Okay? It has been very big for us. Let's put it 40 pixels. Perfect. Alright, so now we can go back to the previous panel. Go to the next panel. Okay. We are going to do then to go to the next panel. The user has to know a password or identify himself. Let's see how it's done. Simply, on this button, we will go to More. And we will select what type of user has access. In this case, we are going to tell it that it is the admin user to which I already have the password set. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it will tell us that when we have to enter the password, when the button is pressed. If the user does not enter the correct PIN, this button will not be pressed. So we won't go to panel 2. We're going to try it. Okay. It is asking us for the password. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've moved on to panel 2. In this panel 2, we could place all the controls that are restricted to normal users. Okay. In this simple way, we have just implemented privileges on the Adquio screens. To create a screensaver, we simply have to add an image. Let's select the image. I have here an image of a mountain with a huge moon. Okay, and this image? We can adjust it to the screen size if we want. Well, for example, 800 pixels. This will be high. Okay. The important part for this to work as a screensaver, logically, we should select an image that covers the entire screen or place it centered. For example, okay, since it has a black background, it doesn't look so bad. But is not the case. The relevant part of this image, we can associate an Adquio variable to control its visibility. So, imagine that we want to make a carousel of 3 images, or 4 of whatever. We will simply create a variable in Adquio. We will connect it here. 181. I seem to remember that it was our switch. And what we will achieve with this is to control the visibility of this image. We want it to be visible if the variable is greater than or equal to 1. If it is at 0, this image will not be visible. Let's check it out. And as you can see, the image is not visible. We activate it. And the image is already visible. By doing this, we can, for example, create a variable that has the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that with a timer changes every 15 seconds, 10 seconds or whatever we want. In this way, we are managing which images are seen by the user. Only when this screensaver arrives would you have to click here to enter your dashboard and be able to work with the screen in the normal way. Okay? Another of the important characteristics of our screen and our HMI is that it allows the coexistence of various applications from different manufacturers, without this leading to a malfunction of our HMI. For example, in this case, we are going to verify how this button is connected. It's working. And let's change to another app. In this case, a browser in which we have our website. Let's navigate here. Okay. Come back to the HMI. You see that it is still perfectly connected and working normally. Okay? This is very important in view of what I was saying before. So, that in the same Adquio screen, both our HMI and third-party applications can coexist, such as a meeting room reservation application, control applications of other types from other manufacturers, perfectly, without this interfering with the proper functioning of our home. With this we end this video. One important thing that we must tell you is that we have recorded all this video using an Adquio and a remote screen that are on the other side of the country. Okay? We have simply used the remote control system that we use for maintenance and that you, as distributors or as partners, can also use. The connection is perfect, and you can work on the screen not only to maintain it, but even to design the scenarios remotely on the client's screen, or modify or improve them, or add elements, etc. The connection is practically as if you were working locally. Both the connection with Adquio and the connection with the screen. As you have just seen, it is perfect. You hardly notice the difference, so it's entirely possible. And also you just saw it work remotely with any of our devices. Thank you very much for your attention, and until the next video.